and we have a great show for you today. We are joined by NASA astronaut Randy Comrade Bresnik. He flew on Space Shuttle Atlantis. He was a member of Expedition 52 and the commander of Expedition 53, and I'm contractually obligated to mention that he is a Marine. Comrade, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be joining everybody this afternoon.
All right, well, we've got a lot of people watching. We want everybody to go down to the comment section, put your questions in there for Comrade Bresnik, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Comrade, to get us started today, tell us a little bit about the Artemis program.
All right, so Artemis, Greek mythology, sister of Apollo, goddess of the moon. Also, that's the name of the program that we have put on our space program that'll take us forward to the moon and then on to Mars. What does that mean? What's an Artemis mission? Crew will get on board an Orion deep space vehicle that we're building right now. Its first flight with humans will be in 2023 and take the crew to the moon landing in 2024. That Orion capsule will be sitting on top of the SLS rocket, the most powerful rocket that humans have ever built. It'll launch out of the Kennedy Space Center where our exploration ground systems folks have the mobile launchers and the launch pads. It'll go from Earth to the moon in about 5 days. And we're talking about the 2024 mission. It'll rendezvous with the lander. The program's called the Human Landing System, or HLS. And from that, the Orion will dock with that HLS. 2 crew members will hop on the HLS and go down the lunar surface while 2 stay up with the Orion. A couple of years after that, we'll actually have the Gateway space station around the moon. And that'll allow Orion to then dock with the Gateway, crew to go onto the Gateway space station, and then 2 crew go down to the lunar surface. And a few years after that, we'll have all 4 crew leaving the Gateway space station. All 4 go down the lunar surface and do a lunar surface exploration. And then a few years after that, we'll have a Foundation Surface Habitat, I think is the latest name, where there'll actually be a habitat on the moon where people will be working and living for long duration. And so that'll be a real neat opportunity for us to do all types of things. All things that we need to be able to go on to Mars. So I'll keep it short at that, and we'll get to your questions, because it looks like what Marty's saying is we're going to have a lightning round for the next 45 minutes.
We do. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Let's start with, we've got one from Bryce, and he wants to know, can you do a handstand when you're in space?
You can do a handstand. You can do a no stand. I know that, I think that they'll put out, my social media is Astronaut Komrade with a K. And on it, there's a video of doing 2-handed push-ups, 1-handed push-ups, 1-finger push-ups, and no finger push-ups, no hand push-ups. So yeah, we show you how that works, because your body's floating, and it's really neat. You can go any direction you want. It's kind of neat, especially when you come in one way with your head up and somebody else is working heads down, and you turn over at that. It's a shocking thing and fun, because it's just so unusual, because on Earth we're so used to everybody with their head sticking up.
I'm guessing when you were a Marine, you wish you could have done some of those 1-finger push-ups.
Oh, I do, and certainly, make the pack that I'm wearing or the gear that I'm carrying weigh as little as well.
Exactly. All right, we've got somebody that wants to know, how will you take advantage of water that's already on the moon?
Great question. Ice. It's on the moon. It's on Mars. We know that for both of them. What is ice when you melt it down? Water. Great question. What's water made up of? Hydrogen and oxygen. And to us, that's not periodic table elements. That is rocket fuel and the oxygen we need in the air to breathe. And so that's really important to be able to use those resources that are there. And so we need to figure out how to get to them. In the moon, it's in shaded areas that don't get sun, and that's where we found the ice. And we have to get to it, bring it up, and then put it in our what we call in situ resources, using the resources of the planet to be able to break that down into the rocket fuel and the oxygen. And so if you think about a Mars mission, well, we figure out how to do that on the moon, which is really close, and we're going there right now. We can send robotic missions to Mars, land where the ice is, process it. And then when the robot, precursor mission calls back and says, hey, the rocket fuel tank is full, the oxygen tank's full, and then we can launch the people and not have to carry all of that on our vehicle itself. So we'll be able to build more efficient vehicles, or put on the things that we need more. We need more food, maybe more water, maybe a radiation shielding, because we're going to be in deep space, and then land right next to the gas station that has all that hydrogen to be able to refuel our rocket to be able to get back home.
Awesome. All right, well, we've got people watching from truly all over the world today. We've got Poland, Slovakia, France, Tennessee, the Ukraine, Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, Washington, New Jersey, Maryland, Scotland, Illinois, Pennsylvania, California, North Dakota, and West Virginia all checking in. Thank you all for watching today. And if we didn't give you a shout out, put where you're watching from down in the comments and let us know what questions you have. We've got Lily, who is 9 years old, wants to know who the first woman going to the moon will be.
Good question, Lily. You can go ahead and look at the list of the 48 American astronauts that are there right now. You can look at the ones that are women, and you can pick from that list, because the people that are going to the next mission with the first woman and the next man on the moon in 2024, that's coming from those 48 people. And so we don't know exactly who it is, but it's going to be one of those women that's on that astronaut poster right now.
And Lily, if you do the math for going to Mars, I think there's a very good chance that you could be one of those first people to step foot on Mars. That's pretty awesome. Great question.
Absolutely.
We've got Sadie, and she wants to know if you can see meteorites from the space station.
Sadie, we can actually see meteorites, and actually, we knew to start looking for them because we'd set up time-lapse cameras to take pictures of as we were going over the Earth at night, and also we'd catch one, in the still shots, even when we weren't sitting there watching, and so then we knew that, hey, is there a meteor shower going on? Oh yes, and then we know to look for them. But they're actually, the strange thing is they're hitting the atmosphere, right? And they're making that fire and burning up in the atmosphere. Well, that's below the space station. So instead of looking up to see meteors on the space station, we look down to see them.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've got Lucas, age 9, who wants to know, what did sunrises and sunsets look like from space?
Oh, Lucas, sunrise and sunsets are awesome. They happen a little quicker, right? Because you're going around the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour, and so it doesn't take quite as long for the sun to, crest the horizon and then come on up like this. But we get 16 of them a day because we get a sunrise, and then 45 minutes later we get a sunset, and then a sunrise 45 minutes later. And it's really cool because the Earth is just black, and then the sky above is pretty black. You really don't see the stars except above you because the sun is back behind the Earth, and so it's really dark around the edges of the Earth. And so when we actually come up to sunrise, you see kind of the sun, the horizon starting to get really blue, and then the blue gets really brighter, and then it becomes a thick blue band. And then just as the sun's about to come up, you see a little bit of orange, and all of a sudden, boom! All this area of the Earth that's in front of you now is visible. Whereas, literally a second or two ago, it was all black with just this blue limb of the Earth around it, and it's really, really neat to see. And then also, like the sunsets are really neat because it's the same thing in reverse, but you can also see all the shadows because the sunset's on the horizon, all the shadows of the clouds and things like that are making really neat colors and changes. The neat thing is every one of them is different because you're in a different spot around the world every time. And that different spot has different weather. And the Earth is precessing underneath the orbit that we're doing, all the time. So it's every time is new. And so we wish we didn't have to work so much up there. We'd like to spend the time in the windows just looking. But unfortunately, your parents' taxpayer dollars pay us to work up there. So that's why we're always, getting to be able to look at the sunrise and sunsets when we can.
Nice. All right. We've got Caden wanted to know, how old were you when you wanted to become an astronaut?
Ooh, see, some people knew when they were very little, I want to be an astronaut. I was fascinated by it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was so cool. But my problem was I didn't think it was possible. I built models with my dad on spaceships and things like that, and I followed along the program. But it wasn't something I really thought was possible. I just admired it from afar. And then I was fortunate to get a scholarship to go to college with the Marine Corps. And so during that time, I was studying math and physics. I was like, wow, that's really neat. I enjoy learning how things work, and how the universe works. And then through that, I was able to apply to be a pilot because that's what I knew I wanted to do. I just was, really excited about becoming a pilot and flying. And so I was able to get a pilot slot from the Marine Corps, go to flight school, and then going through flight school, I was able to become an F-18 pilot. Well, that was pretty neat, be able to fly F-18s. It's a fighter attack aircraft, all the neat missions it gets to do. Getting a chance to go to Top Gun and our weapons school, becoming a training officer in our squadron. And so I'm kind of reaching the point where I'm really experienced in the F-18. It's like, okay, well, then what opportunities do I have next? Oh, take that and be able to go to test pilot school and become a test pilot. To be able to take that experience, do aircraft and systems on the aircraft, make sure they work, and then give them back to the people like I was before, the operational pilots. And so it was at that point where I'm in test pilot school, and a friend of mine at F-18 a little bit ahead of me, he got selected to be an astronaut in the 2000 class. I thought, wow, if they'll take Chunks, maybe I've got a shot. So Chunks, by the way, next month he's launching on the very first SpaceX flight. He's the commander of the very first time that we're putting humans on a Crew Dragon flight. So things worked out pretty well for him. But it's at that point I started realizing that even if, with all these talented people that are out there, I could possibly be, somebody they'd be interested in. And it's a really neat opportunity to be here, and very thankful and humbled by the opportunity to be an astronaut.
Awesome. All right, we've got Sophie and Olivia, and they want to know what your favorite food in space was.
Oh, no doubt, ice cream. Ice cream. Now, ice cream for us isn't freeze-dried stuff that that Amazon might sell you. We have cargo vehicles that come up every few months, and so the most favorite thing for us, well, after all the science, is that one special cooler with the ice cream. And we actually have freezers up on space station that we can use for science, and when they're not being used for science, we can use them for food. And we put that ice cream in there, and for about a week, everybody's just loving on the ice cream. And it was absolutely amazing. My favorite thing for sure, because it's just so different and so new, and you didn't get to have it every day.
Nice. All right. Well, we've got folks watching from Texas, Arkansas, Ireland, Colorado, Florida, Wisconsin, Louisiana, Germany, Kentucky, Indiana, Washington, D.C., South Africa, Greece, and Guatemala. Thank you all for tuning in, and let us know what questions you have. Put those down in the comments section. So we've got Ivy, who is age 6, and she wants to know, will we be growing things when we go to the moon?
Will we be growing things? Well, that's a great question, because that's really important. You can imagine when you go to the grocery store with your parents and you fill up that grocery cart, you got to carry those bags, right, to the car and into the house. And that stuff's heavy. But you go buy a handful of seeds that can turn into a bunch of plants you can eat, that's not so heavy. And so if we can get ice from a moon or Mars, turn it into water, take some seeds with us, and have the right nutrients in the soil, then that's a lot of weight that we don't have to take with us on the journey and lift off of Earth to take with us. We're already growing food on the International Space Station. We've been doing that. And the moon, certainly that'll be something else. That the moon has 1/6 Earth's gravity, so it may be even easier to grow food on the moon once we get there. But it would probably have to be inside our own habitats that we make. So we may end up making a lunar greenhouse that can use maybe lunar soil even, or some additive that we put in the lunar soil to be able to make it work, and we start being able to use these resources that are on other planetary bodies to make food that we need while we live and work there.
Nice. That question also came in from Veronica as well. And I've got a question here from Zoe, who's 8, and I think this is an awesome question, Zoe. Did astronauts argue with their parents about doing homework when they were little?
I think that in the time-space continuum is an absolutely correct statement. And of course, we wanted to argue with the homework. We wanted to stay up late and stay out after dark. And these are things that I think are inherent upon the young human body, the man cubs and the girl cubs. The neat part is that I think is what makes us want to explore. You always want to go more than what you have or what you're doing at that point. And so the neat part is that by listening to your parents and doing your homework, you can do cool jobs. Okay, our space program needs all kinds of people, and if you want to help us get to Mars, sure, there's the astronaut, but that's a very tiny part of the space program. Highly visible, yes, but we've got to have doctors, we've got to have lawyers, we've got to have accountants. To manage all the money. But we also have to have rocket engineers. We got to have people that can bend metal, and welders, and physiologists. We got to have people that can go ahead and do the operations and take the rocket, move it from the big building where we assemble it, roll it out to the launch pad, and get it all hooked up and tested. There's just such a wide variety of people that are part of our space program, tens of thousands of people around the country, whether it's as a government employee with NASA or with our contractors, with other folks that are actually building our things, or the subcontractors, the folks that are building the little parts that go into things that the prime contractors are doing. We could use everybody, but all of them have to be able to really good at what they do and know how to do it, and that takes an education.
Awesome. Well, every parent watching just gave you a virtual high five, so nice job on that one. We've got Cora, who's 7, and wants to know if you ever get motion sickness in space.
Cora, people do get motion sickness in space. It's no different than if you're in a car driving around and your head's kind of down and the car's moving around. It doesn't feel so good, right? Because your head's not really aligned with the car, so and your eyes aren't seeing what you're doing. Your eyes are seeing something different. Well, when the eyes and the belly don't match, that's when people get motion sick. Same thing with airplanes, except now you have the added dimension where the plane can bank or pitch or roll over. And so these types of things are certainly there in airplanes, and it's no different in space, because space, once you get up there, then you're pushed against your seat, while you're accelerating about the 8.5 minutes, 9 minutes to get up to orbit and get from 0 miles an hour to 17,500 miles an hour, or to our overseas friends about 25,000 kilometers per hour. And when that median cuts off, all of a sudden, poof, everything floats. And it's just like slow motion and things are going around. Well, outside of you, that's happening, but inside of you, that's happening as well. And so whatever's in your belly isn't now, gravity isn't holding it down in the bottom. And it's not like, the meter in your car, where there's a little lever that as the gas goes down, at some point the low fuel light comes on. Well, you don't have it anymore in space. Everything's just floating around inside there the whole time. And so that can be a little unnerving. The fact that when you're floating around all of a sudden and you don't feel the pressure on your feet when you want to move around, you're moving around with your hands the whole time. These are all things that you take getting used to. And so, our experience, typically less than 24 hours, everyone has adapted to space. Some may take a little longer than others, and some may, feel sick. But that's the body's natural reaction to the body not feeling what the eyes are seeing. And so there's medicines to help with that. And then, like I said, the human body adapts so quick, and that's what I think is really neat, is it doesn't take someone special. Astronauts aren't superhuman people at all. We're just regular people who get to do a really outstanding and amazing job. And so we are all wired as human beings to be able to do this and go to space, and you'll adapt quickly, just like floating and living underwater and swimming and things like that. Your body adapts. And so that's the neat part about being able to go to the moon and be able to go to Mars, where it's 1/6 Earth's gravity on the moon, 1/3 Earth's gravity on Mars. Human body will get there. It'll adapt. The cool part is our muscles right now are for 1G, 1 full G. And so when we get to the moon, you're 6 times stronger, and on Mars, you're 3 times stronger. So very exciting times for the few first humans that get there.
Awesome. Piper, age 10, wants to know if you have to be in the military to become an astronaut.
Piper, you do not. That was way back in the old days when we were starting this out, and we didn't know, we didn't have any rockets. We didn't have a space industry. We didn't have anything. We were trying to figure it out. So they got military test pilots who were used to, basically getting in something very new and testing it out, seeing how it worked. Right now, I don't know. I can't give you an exact number. Maybe 20% of the astronaut office is military. We come from all branches of service. We have Coast Guard, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. But most of the other folks are other, engineering. They're medical doctors. They're physicists, geologists. We got biological sciences. We got physical sciences. We got engineering. We got operations. We got flight test engineers. So we got all kinds of folks. Just go online and look at the biographies of the astronauts that are out there to see, kind of the career paths and mostly importantly, the education paths that all these people have taken. That's what we look for. We want variety. We want to bring in talents from all different areas so that when we make up a crew, it's just not all of one type of people. Who knows? By the time you go to Mars and it's like 8 months to get there and you're on the surface of the line and 8 months back, we may need a psychologist on the crew. Who knows?
Awesome. Well, we've got Elena, who's 8, and she wants to know if you had the internet when you were in space.
Elena, we did have the internet, and that's relatively new. And so that's really neat to be able to just hop on there and go to a website, or maybe even pull up a video. It's a little bit harder with communication because we have to have satellites talking from us to the satellite to the ground. So you couldn't always just stream stuff like you can right now. But my favorite thing was the internet protocol phone, because I could get on that thing on my little laptop and call anywhere in the world and talk to folks. And the communications has gotten so good over the years on space station. On my first mission in 2009, there was a little bit of lag. And so you kind of had to finish talking and then kind of wait for the other person to start talking. When I was up there 2 years ago, it was as if I was talking to you next door. It was absolutely amazing. No lag whatsoever. And so that was one of my favorite parts of the internet access that we had, was being able to call and talk to my family, and on weekends do video conferences with them and see them.
We have a curator who got a phone call from Kjell Lindgren when he was on station, and she was telling us about it. We're like, what did it sound like? She goes, it sounded like he was in the room next door. It was clearer than on a cell phone. So that we're like, oh, that's cool, but we were hoping it to be kind of, spacey. But all right, we've got a question from Jack in Ontario, and he wants to know, what was the most important thing that you did while you were in space, something that you'll always remember?
Hmm. I say the things that really stick in your mind is you don't remember the exact details typically of your space flight. There's so much stuff crammed in. You're doing everything. You're so concentrated on the task and getting it done, move on to the next thing on the timeline. You remember the people. That's what you remember most. You know, the relationships and the good times and the challenging times you had. But it was the people and the impression they made on you. Task wise, I'd have to say it's the spacewalks. You know, I've had an opportunity to do 5 spacewalks, building and maintaining the space station, and to be able to go outside that spacecraft in your own personal spaceship. And that personal spaceship has a visor that's like this, and all your peripheral vision is now space instead of looking through a window on the side of the spacecraft, like when you guys fly in an airplane and driving a car. And to be able to go out there and see the Earth going underneath you, 6 miles a second, or 10 kilometers a second, it is just really neat to have been able to see that. Again, one of those things you go, I wish I could just go out there and hang out and just look at the Earth rather than have to work the whole time. But again, your parents pay us to get work done and maintain the space station, so that's what we did.
Jack wants to know if the Artemis astronauts will train in the neutral buoyancy lab and on the Vomit Comet.
Artemis astronauts will train in the neutral buoyancy lab, absolutely. And there's 2 ways. Where we'd be doing the microgravity or the zero gravity spacewalks. It would be around Orion or HLS or the Gateway program if it was needed. But they can also weigh them down in their suits in the pool, so they weigh 1/6 Earth's gravity. And now we have rocks in the pool, we have terrain, we can put a lander in there, so they can practice underwater with that type of lunar weight and be able to see what it's like. The Vomit Comet, right now it's not flying, but we think that is a really important capability to be able to do tests and evaluation, because even though you're underwater in the NBL in a spacesuit that's going to be on the moon and it's weighed out for 1/6, your body still weighs 1 g. You can't offload that from in the pool. You also can't in a flying trainer. You still can't get rid of Earth's gravity. In the Vomit Comet, though, you can replicate 1 g during that pushover of the parabola, and crew members will really feel how heavy the suit is. Where does it actually wear on there? What tasks do you have to do? While the suit may weigh 1/6 of Earth's gravity, and your body may weigh 1/6, the mass of it is still there. And so that's kind of the hard part, because you think, oh, I can move really easy because I'm really light, but then I got the suit itself, the mass is still its normal Earth mass. And so it starts going, and you think you stop. Well, it just keeps going because of the mass is going to take you with it. And so that's one thing where the Vomit Comet will be absolutely essential to us being able to get those feelings and understand what those types of moments of inertia are for the suit.
Awesome. We've got Ayla, who's age 12 in Kansas, close to my hometown. Is landing on Earth rough like it's depicted in the movies?
Ayla, it depends on what you land in. Space shuttle, world's largest glider, 225,000 pounds, smooth. We just put the landing gear out about 300 feet, land in and touch down with 2 wheels, just like you would on an airplane. Very smooth. Came in on a Soyuz 2 years ago, completely different story. So Scott Kelly, I liked his analogy, is the coming home in a capsule is a series of car crashes. The first one is you're coming back through the atmosphere, and you got this heat shield on the front, and it's coming through, taking 3,000-4,000 degrees of plasma coming around the side of it, and you get through that, and then finally you're in the atmosphere. And so now the parachutes got to come out. So the first sets of parachutes come out: pilot chutes, drogue chutes, and then the main chutes. Well, when those chutes come out, if you've ever seen somebody skydiving, they're floating along happy, and then they reach back, they throw out their drogue chute or pull the cord, all of a sudden, they get violently ripped out of the frame of the picture. Well, it's the same thing in a spacecraft. And so you are tossed around for about 25 seconds until the thing stabilizes, and you got a nice taut line and fully inflated parachute. And so then you come back down for a while, and for us, the Soyuz is under one big parachute, the biggest parachute ever used. And then we get a warning saying, hey, the retro rockets are about to fire because the round's coming up close. And all of a sudden there's a rocket that fires trying to slow down this velocity, and then you hit the Earth. That's the second car crash. Fortunately for us, it was just, we hit the Earth and we didn't roll over, and the parachutes didn't drag us downrange. And so it was actually kind of like somebody maybe hitting in the back of your car at maybe like 20 miles an hour. So pretty stiff hit, but then that was it, and so it wasn't that bad. I've got friends who they hit, and then the parachute still had some air, and then the wind caught it, and it pulled them, and they tumbled and bounced, got picked up, and then dropped again. And so it's They got, I think, 4 or 5 car crashes. Fortunately, on my flight, we had only 2.
Wow. All right. Well, we've still got people watching from all over the place, including Chile, the Citadel, the United Kingdom, Italy, Iowa, Brazil, Massachusetts. Thank you all for watching. Tanya from Massachusetts wants to know if you were able to take your favorite toy into space.
Oh, let's see. Take my favorite toy. Well, I didn't take my favorite toy, but I took some toys from my kids. And so that was neat. I had a little teddy bear for my daughter who was 7 at the time. My kids like when we make balloons, the animal balloons, those long ones you twist up and turn and all that kind of stuff. So surprise to them, I actually took some of those balloons and the inflator with me up there and made I think a giraffe and a dog for them. And I ended up posting that picture of them floating around, my pets in space.
Awesome. Amy, who's age 9, wants to know, do astronauts argue with each other in space?
Amy, astronauts are human. So you can imagine all humans at some point have some sort of disagreement. The one thing we look for in our astronauts is people that can get along with others, but also people that can resolve, issues in a good way. So we try not to get to the point where we're really arguing. We want people to be able to bring their opinions, because we don't want people, seeing something and not saying something if something's not right. But we also have to be able to bring your opinion, present it nicely to someone, have the person who's there that can make the decision, take that information and listen to them, give them their feedback that, hey, I appreciate that. It's a great comment. Let's go do it. Or, hey, I appreciate that. And here's why we can't do that option. Here's why we can do this other option. And so we work really a lot on our communication skills. We plan on, on the Earth before we go, we train together so we can learn, when people are starting to get maybe a little upset or a little angry or a little tired or a little hungry, we try to figure all those things out before so you can be helpful, and hand them that candy bar before they, when they need it, before, if their energy starting to get a little low. So we definitely work on that. We look to find people that have that good demeanor and be able to, resolve their conflicts in a good way.
Nice. And I think that's very applicable to the situation everybody's going through now. So good advice. Corey, age 9, wants to know, do the simulations do a good job preparing you for the real thing of being in space?
Great question, Corey. We do our best because, you can't put space on the Earth. And so there's a lot of ways we do that. There's the physical aspects and there's the mental aspects. Going to space is like we say an extreme environment. Your body's floating for the first time. Everything's floating. The water that's in your legs right now that makes it so you have enough water in your head so you don't feel faint and pass out. That just starts floating through your body, and you have to get rid of some of it. You're in your mind. You see your whole life right now. Your horizon's like this. You get to orbit, all of a sudden your horizon is like this, and then your mind sits there and extrapolates the rest of this curve to give you the size of the Earth. And you're sitting there going, wait a minute, everything I've ever known, everything I've ever done, everybody that is ever part of my life is down this little thing that I just went around in 90 minutes. And so your brain has to get wrapped around all that. And so we use extreme environment training down here on Earth. We've got, in a partnership with the European Space Agency since 2011, we've been going over to Europe and living and working inside of caves. Because caves, guess what? The temperature is always the same. The humidity is the same. There's no sun, so you don't know what time it is. Well, on the space station, there's temperature is the same, humidity is the same, and you don't know what time it is looking outside because you're going around the Earth every 90 minutes. Remember, 45 minutes and then a sunset and then a sunrise. And, oh, by the way, some people maybe walked through a cave before, a little path with little lights on the side, but most people have never lived in a cave. And so we'll go down there and spend a week and a half in areas where there are no pathways, there are no lights. And it is a whole other planet underneath there. It is absolutely amazing. And it's also dangerous. You have to be very careful about where you're going and tethering yourself and using proper safety protocols, just like when you're on a spacewalk outside. We also train underwater, in the Aquarius habitat off of Florida Keys called Nemo, during Nemo missions, where we'll take a crew and go down underwater and live there for a week or 2 at a time. A lot of people have gone swimming. A lot of people have gone scuba diving. But actually to live underwater, there have been less people that have lived underwater for 24 hours as an aquanaut than there have been that actually gone to space. And so that's another extreme environment we take people so that by the time they go to space, they've been to a few different extreme environments. And so it's just another one, not the first one, and it's be so overwhelming. You mentioned the Neutral Buoyancy Lab earlier. Absolutely our best spacewalking trainer there is, because we can take that big 300-pound spacesuit, and when we inflate it, have the pressure for us to have our atmosphere to breathe on the inside, it actually floats. So we put weights all over and strategically put those weights so we actually end up neutrally buoyant, and we don't float up and we don't float down. And that's our simulation for being in zero gravity. We also have simulators on the ground that are with our computers that have the cockpit of the vehicles we're flying, and has displays out the window that would replicate what we've been seeing. And so whether it's a space shuttle, a space station, or the Soyuz, we were actually able to plug into computers and plug into mission control and train our flight control teams with these simulations on the ground. So we're working all the time to get better and better simulations so that when we get there, crew members know what to do and have some feel of what it's like on their bodies, and actually get their minds wrapped around the tasks they have to do when they finally see that the horizon's gone from this to this.
Awesome. All right. Well, Marcus, who's age 10, wants to know, what's the big difference between being an F-18, between an F-18 and a spaceship?
F-18 and a spaceship. All right. Well, the F-18 had these, wonderful motors, could go to afterburner and accelerate you out. And, getting shot off the end of an aircraft carrier, took about a second and a half, go from 0 to 150 miles an hour. It was really neat. Supersonic, you get up to Mach 1.8 in a Hornet. It was really neat. Well, when I don't know if you can see them here, I got this Mach 25 patch. Well, our spaceships go a little faster. And I mentioned how getting up to speed, the time off an aircraft carrier, when you do that rocket launch, it's 8.5 to 9 minutes of continuous acceleration. You're pushed back into your seat, accelerating. And you guys have all felt that, when your parents or somebody's stomped on the gas really hard, you push against your seat, or you're on a roller coaster ride that shoots out, you feel that acceleration, but it always stops because there's not enough power or engine or thrust behind it to keep you going. So it is a strange feeling to have continuous thrust, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes. You're sitting going, wow. And that's what's so amazing about these, rockets that have millions and millions of pounds of thrust to be able to escape Earth's gravity and put that little tiny capsule, a little tiny, space shuttle up in space. And so the F-18 cockpit was a little more spacious than the Soyuz that I rode in recently. And so that was certainly appreciated. But again, they have completely different functions. But all day long, if I took that F-18 and put it in afterburner and pointed it straight up, at some point, Earth's gravity would catch it, and there wouldn't be enough thrust, and we have to fall back to Earth. Fortunately, in spaceships, we don't.
Nice. Joy, who's 17, is a high school senior who wants to become an astronaut. What advice do you have for reaching that goal, and what difficulties did you face getting to where you are now?
Certainly, Joyce, the 17, you're getting ready to go to school or off to college here soon. Getting through school, being able to find the field of study that not only you're doing because you think it's a good degree, but it's because you're interested in it. Because if you're interested in and passionate about it, you're going to do better. And you're going to be able to find those niche areas where you see gaps, especially all you young people are so smart to be able to look at what we've done before and go, well, this hasn't been looked at, that hasn't been looked at. How can I make this better? And figuring that out, and use your time in college, whether it's narrowing down to a specific field of study, finding internships, finding research projects that you can do to enhance your education as well as your thinking ability. And then the real thing that we look for after people's education at NASA is basically, what have they done? What have they done with that education? It isn't always this college that you go to and the name that's on the application. Because you could go to some fancy name school, come out with a good GPA and a good degree, but if you can't use it, then that isn't of use to us. And so it's what have you done, and what research field and what passion have you shown, and how good have you gotten in your particular field of study that you've turned into field of research, and that's what we look for when we have people on the applications. And you also, like I said before, go look at the biographies of the people that are astronauts. It's so varied, from the bachelor's degrees to the master's degrees to the sports to the classical piano players to people that climb Mount Everest, or people that have fixed old cars and repaired old houses like I did. It's just, we look for all kinds of people, well-rounded people who have all kinds of skills and interests. And because when you're in space, you have to do everything. You're the electrician, you're the plumber, you're the toilet cleaner, you're the window washer, you're the electrician, you're the spacewalker, you're the doctor, you're the psychologist for your crewmates. And I was also the barber. I cut all the crew members' hair that I was up there with, including my own.
That's probably a skill that's coming in handy now, isn't it?
It actually is. A few weeks ago, it's the first time I've cut my hair myself since I was in space.
All right, we've got Cole from New Jersey, and he wants to know, how and where did you sleep on the ISS?
Good question. My first mission, when we went to Space Shuttle Atlantis, we docked to the front side of the space station. And because I didn't want to, I want to sleep somewhere new, I spent most of the nights we were docked to the space station in the Columbus module, the European one. And what I found fun every day was sleeping in a different position. I didn't have to sleep heads up. Like right now, when I go to the trainer at Johnson Space Center, everything's in the vertical orientation. In the space station up there, I was able to sleep on the ceiling one night. I was able to like go inverted one night. I went diagonal one night, just so I could wake up and look and see something really strange and try and figure out where I was. That was pretty neat because that was the mission where my daughter, who's now 10, was born in between my first and second spacewalk. And that was a really neat place for me because that's when I would be on the phone and hear about what was going on with my daughter. I got to meet her finally, through a video. And then on my last mission, when we were there for 5 months with Expedition 52 and 53, we have crew quarters going around the Node 2. We have 4 of them, one on the left, one on the right, one on the bottom, one on the top. I slept in the top one. And so when you look at the videos of me floating around, there's one of them where it has me doing all types of translations and having fun with being in zero gravity. When it shows you floating in heads up, and all of a sudden I jump up and go into this hole that's up in the ceiling, and that's where I slept. And so it's kind of fun to be able to, if we had something to say to each other, you kind of poke your head out your door and you see somebody below you and then somebody off to the side of you and somebody off the other direction. It was really neat. So we're all there together in the Node 2 on the space station right now.
Nice. We've got a couple of questions about spacesuits. Aurora wants to know if your nose ever gets itchy on a spacesuit, what do you do? And Gideon wants to know if you can run out of air.
Aurora, good question. Your nose gets itchy in a spacesuit, and for me, it's typically about 2 seconds after they put the helmet on. Every single time. I purposely go in there and I scratch my nose, before they put the helmet on for our spacewalk training in the NBL, for example, or up on orbit for the EVAs. And like within 2 seconds, I feel like I scratch my nose. We have it's called a Valsalva device. You know how like when you're in an airplane, sometimes you have to hold your nose and blow to be able to get your ears to clear. We have one of those in our suit in case we need it. And so unfortunately, I'm able to go over there and just kind of scratch my nose on that, and that takes care of it. And what was the second question, Martin?
Gideon wanted to know about running out of air.
Gideon, the suits all have a certain amount of air, and that's all the time we have. And so that's always trapped on the ground, and they let us know how close we are, and there's certain reserves, like you don't want to drive around in your car with the red low fuel light on. We have the same kind of thing. We don't get down to low oxygen. But we actually have emergency oxygen on board, so that if for some reason there's a hole in the suit, or you had a leak in one of your seals, the emergency oxygen is another little bottle at higher pressure that can actually, we say, feed the leak and give you enough air to be able to get finish with your task and get inside the airlock and repressurize. And so it is possible, but we certainly make sure that we don't ever get close to that limit. The way you conserve the air is working out and being in shape before you ever go out for a spacewalk, so that your body's efficient with the air that it has. And then you also don't work too hard, because you can imagine, Gideon, if you're going to go for 5 miles, you have to go from A to B, 5 miles. If you run that whole way, you might be a little more tired and use a little more oxygen than if you jog or if you walk fast. And so we try and be very efficient on our spacewalk so we don't run out of energy or air.
All right, we've got just a couple of minutes left and 2 really important questions. Ivy wants to know if you celebrated Halloween in space.
Ivy, we did. I was up there for Halloween on my last mission. And like I said before, those pictures, in fact, last October, I sent those pictures out again, kind of as a on this day type of thing on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it showed the pictures of our crew. We had crewmate Mark Vandehei was Wolverine, and that was a great costume because we don't like sharp things in space stations, but he had like spoons sticking out of his fingers as the Wolverine's claws. Joe Cabo had a spooky pumpkin shirt. Paolo Nespoli from Italy, he was Spider-Man. My Russian crewmate Sergei Rosansky was a gorilla. Our crewmate Sasa Misurkin was a knight, and costume picked out by my kids, I was a minion.
All right, well, the last big important question, Gabe wants to know, did you have chicken nuggets in space?
Ooh, chicken nuggets. Gabe, we didn't. We need to fix that. We had all kinds of chicken. We had chicken patties. We had curry chicken. We had all these other meals that are prepared, chicken teriyaki, but no chicken nuggets. I like that idea. That whole warm and crunchy outside and soft, juicy inside. We don't have a whole lot of that on space station. I think we need you to make that oven that we can use in space, Gabe.
Gabe, I think there's a job for you at the food lab at Johnson Space Center.
Yes.
Comrade, you mentioned briefly the painting behind you. Tell us about what we're looking at back there.
All right, so this is a painting that similar to a picture that I took when I was in space that I sent to a friend of mine who's an auto mechanic. And so when I can't fix something myself, I go to Pat. Well, he liked it so much, he's turned into a budding artist. And this is actually done on a sheet of aluminum, like you would use to fix your car. And what he did to make these swirls and everything was he took a grinder and then he put a drill with a wire wheel on it and put in all these swirls for the aurora that make it look like it's three-dimensional. And then he used automotive paint to go ahead and give you the color of the green of the aurora, and then black, and then got some stars up here in the upper corner, and then polished it all down with the same kind of polish you polish the paint on your car. And so it's one of my favorite pieces of art, because it just very much reminds me of what it's like to be able to see the Earth when it's getting hit by all this cosmic radiation and energy, and the molecules in our upper atmosphere getting lit up by it.
Well, it is awesome. Comrade, we're just about out of time. We want to remind everybody to tune in next week on Thursday. We'll be talking about the Hubble Space Telescope, which turned 30 this week. There's some new images coming out, and Hubble even allows you to look and see what image was taken on your birthday. So we'll be talking all about the Hubble Space Telescope. And then next week, we also have a brand new episode of STEM in 30 coming out about World War II. We encourage you to check that out. Comrade, stay safe, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
Take care. Thanks for watching.